Hello everyone, it's Mrs. Dornberg, and today I'm going to show you how to make one of my absolute favorite dishes, sheet pan spaghetti squash puttanesca. It is a one pan sheet pan dinner, and it is vegetarian, and it utilizes lots of good nutrient rich vegetables. So first of all, the first thing that you need to do is you need to cook the spaghetti squash. So you take a spaghetti squash, you cut it in half, scoop out the seeds, and then you'll season it with salt and pepper, a little bit of oil, put it face down on a baking sheet with a piece of parchment, and bake this for about 20 minutes. You should just be starting to get a little bit of softness here. These aren't quite done because we're going to add some other stuff to the pan, but this is almost soft. So, and you can see by putting them down like this, we're getting a little bit of a caramelization on there, and so that is going to help flavor our dish, because spaghetti squash is notorious for not having a lot of flavor, and it's usually because people cook it wrong. So if your spaghetti squash is not on one half of the pan, kind of push them off to one side. Then for the puttanesca part, we're going to take some tomatoes. Now these are just whole grape, or you can even use cherry tomatoes, but just leave them whole. And I'm mixing that with a little bit of chopped garlic, some capers. You might want to rinse your capers if they're really salty, and then some Kalamata olives that are pitted and halved. So when you're buying olives, it is better to buy them with the pits in. It'll keep them from getting too mushy. And to pit them, you can use a cherry pitter, and it makes it very easy. So I'm just going to add a little bit of red pepper flakes, just a few little flakes there. That just gives it a little bit of a zing. If you like it a little hotter, you can add a little bit more of that. Then we're going to take probably about 1 or 2 tablespoons of high quality oil. So this is an olive oil, so you want to have something that will add to the flavor of our dish. And we're just going to toss that all together in a bowl. Oh, we lost one of our tomatoes, so we'll put that back in there. Toss that all together. Then we're going to put this on the other side of the sheet pan. So this goes on the other side, and then we're going to put it back in that 400-degree oven for about 10 to 15 minutes until the tomatoes start getting soft and blistering. So we're going to just put that in the oven, and we will return after that. All right, we're back. Now we cooked these tomatoes I think it was about 15 minutes. They were a little firm, so they took a few extra minutes than normal, but you want them to start getting shriveled. So if they're not shriveled, you want to cook them until they are. So you can you can see then smash them down with a fork, all right? So you want them to be soft enough that we can squish them down and they're gonna meld into our dish, all right? And then when you let it sit out for a minute or so, they'll get even a little softer, and this will be even easier to do, all right? Some of them, just make sure you don't squirt yourself, right? So you have all that good tomato and olive and caper and all that good stuff in there. This one didn't get too soft. All right, so we'll just mush those together. So like I said, you can use cherry tomatoes, you can use grape tomatoes. I'm sure you could even use big tomatoes that you cut into chunks. I haven't tried it with canned tomatoes, but you might be able to use a can of tomatoes. I would drain the juice off and then add the juice in back later, and just roast the regular tomatoes, or maybe some fire roasted tomatoes would be good. All right, so after you get that all mixed in, then we're going to you can see our spaghetti squash now is even more shriveled up than it was before, and if we put our finger in, it's very, very soft. The indentation stays. So take a pot holder and turn it over, and you have some of that browning, which is going to give you some flavor and some caramelization. It also should be pretty dry. If it's really moist, then you might want to just cook it a little bit upright to get rid of some of that moisture. But now you just take your fork and you just scrape out that's inside. So it's like raking the squash, all right? So you just take that fork. It is hot, so you do want to have a towel or a pot holder to hold it. I do find that you can let it cool a few minutes, so it's a little easier to handle, but once it gets too cool, it doesn't seem to come out as easily. So you still want it warm when you're getting that inside of the spaghetti squash. So if you've had trouble before getting nice strands, it might be because it's too wet and you've just steamed it rather than roasted it. But you should get all the way down to that skin. You can see where we have that nice clean down to the skin. All right, so we'll put that over to the side. One piece of skin came here, so we'll clean that up. And just do this right onto the same pan as you have your tomatoes. All right, and then you would do the other side, but for sake of time, we'll put that over to the side for right now. Then break up any of those pieces that you have, and we are going to mix that now with the spaghetti squash. All right, so you'll have those two sides of the spaghetti squash, and you will mix that in. You can put this in back into your bowl. I actually saved my bowl for my tomatoes, so it still has a little bit of that oil in there, so we could put it back in there. So after you mix this all up, the beauty about having parchment is now parchment doesn't really get that hot. So if you can get the corners, this isn't hot at all. And then you can just gather that up. You can put that into your bowl. And then you can just lift that parchment, and now everything is in there nice and clean. All right, so a little trick there. Now, to add to this, we're going to take some fresh chopped parsley and some fresh basil. If you don't have that, fine, put something else in there. And then even if you have some pesto, you can put that in, or a little bit of dried basil maybe for flavor, but try to find something fresh and green if you can. If you don't have parsley, some chives, something. And you're going to mix that in. And then we want to just drizzle a little bit more oil, some olive oil in there, maybe another tablespoon to kind of moisten everything up. You can salt and pepper to taste on this. There is quite a bit of salt with those olives, so you might not need too much, but a little bit usually is good. A little bit of fresh pepper if you like. And then the recipe does call for toasted pine nuts, and I really think it makes it taste fabulous. But right now I don't have pine nuts. A lot of times you don't have pine nuts; they're very expensive. So in a pinch, and as a substitute, I use some sunflower seeds. So these are raw, or you can use toasted, but they'll give you that little bit of crunch and that contrast that is really so nice in a dish like this. So you put that in there. And then at the end, if you have and you eat cheese, have a little bit of fresh Parmigiano Reggiano and put that in there. So always make sure that you grate your own. Don't buy that pre-shredded, especially in Parmesan. That's pretty nasty. And just put that on there, and you can either put that on before you serve it, or you can put a little bit in and mix it so it gets mixed in and gooey, and then you can serve it with a little bit more. So this makes a beautiful vegetarian dish. Or if you're having some grilled meat, you can have some chicken or some fish or something with this. You can make it a side dish. Or if you're serving multiple people, this could be the vegetarian part, and then you could cook some meat for the meat eaters. So hopefully you'll give this a try. Like I said, whenever I can have spaghetti squash and tomatoes at the same time, this is my go-to dish. So I don't have a whole lot of go-to dishes, and this is one of them. So I hope you try it, and I hope it makes it into your collection like it's made it into mine. So until next time, this is Mrs. Dornberg.